So he's back, folks. We don't need all that mumbo jumbo beginning crap. We know who we're dealing with here. So last time we got into your story, I'd like to learn a little bit more about you. I want to ask you this question. Throughout your recovery journey, can you tell me about a time where you found yourself either in a relationship or using coping skills that you thought you had outgrown? Can you tell me about an experience where you thought to yourself, I thought I was further along than this, or I shouldn't be doing this with this many years of recovery?
Well, now you're talking about yesterday, last
Yes,
Thursday.
yes.
I mean,
A big one,
you
a big
know,
one.
yeah, okay. The
Every day, yes.
right. And I keep thinking, well, I thought I had this nailed down.
Yeah.
And certainly there were times in which I thought, well, I mean, it happened at different phases
Yeah,
of
let's hear
my,
about some of them.
because different phases, you're going to have different,
Mm-hmm.
those very things. And I think when I was pastoring way back in the way back times, and I thought I had things pretty together and knew where I was going, knew what I was doing. I had begun to address some codependency. So that was a good thing. Oh, well, now I
You
know
got
about
it.
codependency.
Mm-hmm.
I got it. And I've got the medal and I've got I've got everything. And then come to realize how difficult it was for me to stay self-regulated emotionally with certain people
Mm.
and certain organizations, my own church, certain
Mm-hmm.
people in the church. And I thought, what is going on? Why am I discombobulated? Because I thought I was on my way to being totally mature. And that was very painful to realize that, oh, Jerry, you have much to learn here. And on the one hand, that was disappointing. I disappointed myself, I guess is the way I felt. And then on the other hand, I'm going, but I can see why that might be because of what I had been through in being such a good people pleaser. And I thought I had kind of dealt with the people pleasing and thought, whew, well, now I'm glad I don't have to people please anymore while I'm people pleasing. And that was a rude awakening in that era of my life. Then you can move it on up to, I remember well, there are a couple of things. One, well, even with the becoming a therapist, because when you start out becoming a therapist, you don't know a whole lot and you don't know a whole lot about yourself, but you're thrown in the room like you're the expert. And yike, I just realized how insecure I felt, how I didn't feel good about me. It exposed my low self esteem and lack of confidence and shame and unworthiness. It exposed all that. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I want to do this because this is just maybe I need another field. I
Yeah.
should go into
Get in
being
the
a
mirror.
lawyer.
Yeah.
Right. Let me get because this is, I thought it would be easier than this.
Mm.
But you're dealing with real life, real people, real issues. You're going to deal with your issues in
Mm.
your real life, unless you're going to stay in total denial and just pretend and put on the face. So those are at least a couple of times when I've realized life is, and then I've had some relationships where I thought I was further along. And one ended up being actually abusive. And I never thought I would be in an abusive relationship.
Mm.
Never, never, never. And that
Can
was
you tell me
so,
about that?
well, I think I was in a relationship in which, you know, the, well, I know what has happened. When I start a relationship, I move into the engulfment phase.
So you feel engulfed.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And
Okay.
I'm okay with that. And in fact, I call that love. I mean,
Are you
that's
disorganized or are you avoidant?
maybe avoidant.
Okay.
And so with the
Engulfment.
engulfment, that's what I saw as love. But it
Mm.
happened so quickly. It
Mhm.
happens quickly, which then I began to realize later when I learned more about it and learned more about myself that this is not a good
Match.
pace
Mhm.
and not a good match and not and if you go from no relationship to being engulfed by the other person, that's too quick of a, that's a problem. And then I'm going to be blinded, love is blind, which it certainly can be. And then I'm going to be also in love with a narcissist who is not considering my feelings, blaming me, and then I cause trouble. And then if I cause trouble, what's going to eventually happen? And that's when I remember experiencing abuse,
Emotional abuse,
physical abuse. It was both.
Okay.
Yes. Fortunately, it only happened probably twice, but for me, that was 2 times too many.
Yeah.
And as it should be for anyone. And I had big bruises on my shoulders from where they had shoved me. And like, what the heck? So I feel for those who've been in a relationship where there's been physical abuse. And as much as I didn't like it and was not going to put up with it, I still felt the trauma bond.
Yeah.
I still felt how can I give this up?
Yeah. It's
Because
like,
I don't know if I'll make it. It's like, what?
I think that is just one of the most baffling experiences and feelings, just to be so sane, yet so insane at the same time, and be able to like pretty much see crystal clear what is going on, but like really being incapable to do anything else because you're just hijacked by your nervous system.
Oh, you absolutely are. And people who are not or have low self-differentiation, which I had at the time, doesn't mean they're not smart, capable, intelligent. It doesn't mean it's not equivalent to that. And so it's not like we don't know something, but the emotional process takes over, or the emotional immaturity is what's in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
There may be some sanity in the passenger seat, but it's not driving the car.
Yeah, it's the witnessing it.
Right. It's witnessing it and going, Jerry, you might want to do something different here. No, I'm fine. This is that I can't give this up. And you're right. It is a schizophrenic type of experience. Horrible use of the word, but it's a 2-person, experience.
And yet it does not happen by mistake. Like what came from that? It's like, unfortunately, like, this is how it works, folks.
This is how it
works.
That's right. And you're right. And I hate saying it, needed to go through it.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't tell everybody, well, you need to be abused for a while before you'll, I would never say that to anyone. But I couldn't break out or see clearly until something physical happened. And then it began to crack my denial and crack my paradigm and the way I was thinking. And so I thought, this is what people must mean when they're abused and can't leave or don't feel like they can leave or think, well, again, they'll change, but they're a really good person on the inside. But they're, all of those things we go through when we're in a bad relationship like that, and even whether a narcissistic relationship.
Yeah.
Well, I know they're a narcissist, but, I had one person say, but what did he say? I had her dripping in diamonds, but I was dripping in diamonds. So how bad can he be? And if only I could show him that love that's inside of him that he needs to discover, or whatever. And it's like,
and little do they know that it has nothing, like it actually has nothing to do with that person, right? It's just all a recreation. No. So what was the wound there that you needed to heal?
Well, the wound I needed to heal was several, not just one.
Mhm.
The I am not lovable, so I must settle for this engulfing love that's coming my way. I need to settle for that, because you can't be thinking, can't I don't really, not healthy love. I mean, come on, that's for good people. And that I didn't feel I was a good person because I had a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and I felt, I just deserved to be rejected.
Yeah.
And this person is not rejecting me.
Mm.
So voila, we have a relationship.
And going into that, like, consciously, had you thought that you had worked through the I'm not lovable wound?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yes. Yes. Oh, now I'm well enough to have a relationship.
Yeah.
Because look, I have one.
So I'm curious for you, like, has Partworks played a role, like, for you? And because I also know too, you have some sexual abuse in your childhood, and I know that, like, that
I,
fragmentation of the self is very intense when you are experiencing sexual abuse as a kid.
oh, definitely, you have a disconnection with
Yeah.
self, and also the struggle with feeling whole, being seen as whole, and then certainly me seeing me as whole. I don't ever remember early in my life ever seeing myself as a whole, or whole, as a whole, or whole. And I'm looking around and thinking, but some people I think feel that way about themselves. But I don't feel that way. With parts work, I think about those issues. And of course, I often connect them back to family of origin because of the
Yep,
work that
of
I do.
course.
And I go back to family of
It's all
origin,
connected. Mhm.
and the patterns that were going on now, the Wi-Fi I was experiencing then, I'm experiencing the Wi-Fi still. How do I shut off the modem? How do I shut off the family of origin modem so that I can be me and not doing the family Wi-Fi? And a part of that family Wi-Fi is this, I'm not whole. I can't take care of myself. I'm not lovable. I am rejectable. Well, and also with sexual abuse, I'm not believable, and that I should just ignore that happened, which is basically we're going to ignore you. I mean, that's basically what that comes down to. That you think this is important, but it's too difficult for us. So we will just
Mm.
show you how unimportant it should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the problem is, it then instills in me a part of me that I am unimportant. And so when I do the family work, just on that issue alone, let's say, what would I feel? What would I do? What would I experience if I considered myself important? Kind of scary. Number two, if I was important and not unimportant, would be the downsides, not the upsides, the downsides. And in my family, there would be downsides. If I saw myself as important, do you know how weird I would look to them if I saw myself as important? And I don't mean narcissistically important. I know what I
Mhm.
mean.
I know what
I
you mean.
mean just
Yeah.
that I'm of value,
Yeah,
and
that you're just as worthy as
I'm a
anyone else.
person,
Yeah.
right? And that I should be listened to and valued, not over everybody else, but I'm not ignored, not and oh my, that would just look way too weird. And so I would have pushback from the relationship milieu that I have lived in and created.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the struggles, say, codependents have when they make the change and start to grow.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have this relationship environment
Yeah.
that, believe it or not, may not always support their recovery.
It usually does not.
And it usually does not. But let me go further. Even their codependency recovery community may not
Mm.
always support their recovery because,
Ex Take that further. Explain.
okay, Yeah, that's
Please.
even, I've been to many CODA meetings, many AA, Al-Anon, I've been lots of, and I love 12-step recovery. I'm not bashing it at all. We're talking about people, not the program.
Mhm.
And so, but if we, whenever you form a close recovery network or community, you, it's a pair, there will be paradoxical results. One is you will feel supported. You will have people who care about you. You will have people who might even share with you if you're going the wrong way. Right? Now, one of the other difficulties is if you've joined that community, it also has limitations and delimiters on it. And you can't be better or more healthy than the group.
No shit. Yeah, it's not a group of a group of wellness.
Yeah, it's not, they're not all just well people who have reached the 100 mark and now
They
come
say the
join
odds are good, but the goods are odd.
That's exactly right. And so that's true with any group. So that's also why in recovery and in rehab for alcoholic drug abuse and codependency, don't go recover with your wife. Don't recover with a person you met here in group and now you're going to go recover together.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? It's not because it wouldn't be supportive to it. They could be supportive, but the thing is the delimiters that will be a problem. If that person falls off, then it affects you too much.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't handle that yet. And same way in a recovery group, because I've talked to many people, clients who go to CODA, let's say, CODA meetings, and there's all kinds of relationship dynamics that can happen there. And again, not that people shouldn't go to CODA. I think definitely codependency will kill you. Go get some help for that. But you can have certain dynamics that can happen in the group and happen with that can be limiting on your, well, oh, well, you sound like you know better than the rest of us. Well, maybe they've learned something that you haven't learned. But see, then they might get all jealous, envious, be a hater because they don't know any better.
Of
You need to
course.
you need to keep your recovery at pace with all of ours.
When was the last time that you worked in like inpatient drug and alcohol rehab? A long time ago, right?
Yeah, I would say late 80s, early 90s.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting to think about now. Like, I mean, I'm curious if they're bringing up the trauma piece, like in inpatient.
Well, trauma of just trauma.
Well, that addiction is usually rooted in trauma.
Oh, oh,
Yeah.
they were just starting to connect the two.
Yeah.
They were just starting in the reports and the research to show how much there was a correlation between the two.
Yeah. I mean, I got sober in 2008. So, I mean, I'd been in a million outpatients and 3 inpatients. I don't think I heard it once.
Yeah, no, well, here's another reason why they might not have. Because back then they thought it's too early to talk about the trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I think in some cases it is.
And in some cases, you're absolutely
Yeah.
right.
Well, especially for me because it wasn't presenting itself yet, but I was also a teenager, right? And like all this complex trauma, a lot of the times it's not going to expose itself until, you're growing up a little bit. So I got sober at 19, and then from 19 to 28 is when it all came up to the surface. But yeah,
And we would have been focused on
yes.
getting sober first.
Yes.
Then
Which for most people, that's important. However, there are certain people that they're not going to get sober unless they address it right away.
Or unless they're educated about that.
Yeah.
Because you don't even have to do all of the healing.
Yeah. Just to be
educate them
aware of it. Yeah.
just to be aware of it so they're not later taken by surprise.
Yeah, I go to this, it's really the only meeting that I go to other than my own community, but it's a double winners group. They do. Have you seen this? They've written the traditions, but from a relationship perspective. Have you seen that?
I have not.
So it's Al-Anon traditions, but it's written in a way
Right.
that applies to in a relationship. So it's really interesting. But this guy was talking about, he's an AA, and he was just talking about, I mean, he was definitely going into like a trauma response. And I went up to him afterwards and I go, "How long have you been sober?" And he was, I think he said like 9 months. And I was like, "Well, it might be like a little too early for this." But I was explaining to him how what he was describing was an emotional
Was
flashback. And he goes,
right.
"You know what? That makes so much sense." He goes, "My mom was telling me that she thinks I have bipolar." And she goes, "I think you're right." And he's like, "Well, what do I do?" And I'm like, "Don't worry about it." I'm like, "This is going to take forever. Don't worry about it. Just plant a seed. Just plant a seed."
And you're right. And it's interesting because I've been doing more research on trauma,
And
even been speaking to some other and hearing from some different authors who are experts in trauma, and that what I wanted to do was to add to what I do.
mhm.
How can family of origin or family systems work aid in trauma recovery?
And
And I'm finding that, but that's always been my anecdotal belief, that those who have had trauma, because you can have reactivity from your trauma, you can also have reactivity from the family of origin within you.
isn't that kind of the same thing?
Nope.
You don't think so?
Nope. Nope. Those are two different. Nope. And that's what I
Explain
wanted.
it to me.
Okay, that's yeah. No. Systems feelings is different than trauma feelings.
I mean, but wouldn't that kind of be just generational trauma within?
Well, yes, that is true. But let's say if having enmeshment and that big being a triggering theme or issue for you is different than if you were beaten every day and you had trauma from that.
Well, okay, but isn't systems family just complex trauma,
Yes, yes, that
right?
is, yeah, no, you're on the right, you're on the
I'm just
right
trying to make
path.
sense of it. Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
understand. It's
no,
not
no,
big T trauma, but I would say that it
no, but
is
no,
complex
that's
trauma, right?
exactly right. Right. Well, and if your parents all they did were hypercritical and they're narcissistic parents,
Yeah.
that's going to be daily chronic traumatic
Mm-hmm.
events. Now, but I guess what I was wanting to share was the difference between those is that you can work on both of them in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can work on them in a different way, and this reduction can help with this, and of
Absolutely.
course this reduction can help with this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I
all
think so
I'm.
too. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
100% agree. Do you think that the nervous system response though is the same? Like whether you're getting triggered by the family system versus whether it's something that's triggering your own trauma, do you think it's the same sort of, I mean, it's still the amygdala being hijacked?
Yeah, it's still, getting the amygdala hijacked no matter what. And you're right. However, there are differences between trauma and trauma feelings and systems feelings. Systems are feelings you're supposed to feel to fit into the system. Trauma feelings are feelings you feel as a result of a trauma or traumatic of some kind. And that and it may not take trauma to do the first one. That may not be trauma or traumatic. For example, in our family, well, let me go back to we were talking about these two areas so that we can reduce those and begin to heal. With if and I think it may be better if I just give an example
Please.
than
Mhm.
try to explain all the other stuff. If I am low self differentiation, high fusion or enmeshment with my family of origin, how is that going to affect my CPTSD?
But the enmeshment is what caused the CPTSD.
well, the enmeshment was the milieu for the PTSD, but enmeshment is not a trauma.
Yes, it is. That's what Pia
Well,
Melody thinks.
Okay, well, and I'm not saying it's a good thing at all. I'm not trying to clean up enmeshment and make it less
So do you not view
painful.
emotional neglect as trauma?
Yes.
I mean, I think enmeshment is trauma.
Well, and that's probably a fair point. And you probably, I could grant that one. Because that's, yes, that is trauma.
I think that I agree what you're saying, like, but I think that what you're saying to fit into the system, like, that is trauma. You are taught that you can't, whether it's very subtle things.
Right. Whether
the reason
very
that you're
subtle,
acting that way and trying to connect with the group is because you got the message, however, which way it was, that you had to act a certain way, or it wasn't okay for you to be this way. So that, in essence, trying to fit in with a family system is a trauma response. We can agree to disagree, but that's what I think.
No, I definitely think it is an unhealthy response.
So then, do you not think it's embedded in, like, on a nervous system level, or no?
Oh, yes.
Uh-huh.
It's very deeply embedded, just as trauma would be. Very deeply embedded. And I'll have to think about that some more, how I would put it into my language. That's an interesting, that was good that you.
No, I love this. This is great. This is my shit, right? Aren't you into this? This is fun. I love being able to have these conversations.
I like that.
I want to ask you a question about that. So then, okay, let's say we're viewing these system treatments versus dealing with a personal trauma. How do you view the treatment as different? What needs to happen differently when we're dealing with the family systems stuff? Because it's still internal, right? It's still about how this is impacting the person, right?
Absolutely. And that I think you can gain benefit in the understanding and relieving symptoms, which leaves more room for the body to be able to deal with trauma. Which leaves more emotional space and strength to deal with that trauma. For example, let me give you a woman comes and she was raped in college. You would say that's a trauma, I'm sure.
Of course, that's big T trauma, yeah.
Big T. And it'd be horrible. Now she has that trauma. Plus, she also has her family of origin. And you're right. Who knows? Did that play in any way into that bad situation? Who knows? I don't know. We don't know all the details. But still, she was wrong, period, and victimized. So it doesn't matter. Now, she has both of these things going on. Her family of origin issues and the big T trauma. I believe if you work on this, it can help you work on this. You also can work on this, and that can help you work on that. So I do think they correlate with one another. But if I begin to build a more confident self and a more detached self, well, I may experience the trauma differently.
Well, 100%. But I think that goes, I think this kind of goes to my point too. And this is why, like, when we're talking about, okay, this big T trauma here, and then this other stuff that maybe you're viewing as family systems, but like the impact that all of that family system stuff has is way more impactful than the one event that happens, because this is something that's happened when you are developing your sense of self. And so addressing that big T trauma, sure, you're addressing that, but if you have the added layer of, like, that's why this stuff takes so much more time. And that's why EMDR is, like, more effective, like when you're just dealing with something that more recently happened, because that's the stuff like the enmeshment, like, think about it. Like, that's not trauma. Think about the impact that has on a sense of self versus just somebody, if they were, raped or something, that's horrible. But those core beliefs are so much more impacted by this very subtle shit going on in a dysfunctional family, right?
Now, absolutely. And there's a lot of, you're absolutely right. Now, why are some people less traumatized by trauma?
There's so many different factors. There's a million different things going on, right?
And what would be some of those things?
Well, their upbringing obviously is a huge part of that, right? Their sense of self. I mean, like, who was with them, like what the circumstances are of the trauma. Like, did they already have a relationship with a therapist? Like, It's like, why do things affect kids differently that live in the same house? Like, it's kind of, there's so many different things.
No, and you're right. And I think one of the things that, again, that I've in my research and looking is that the more resilient the self is, the less impactful the trauma is.
No, I think that
that's
the
all
family systems work is the most important stuff.
no, and and obviously I tend to lean that way.
Yeah.
That's the direction.
I'm just saying I view that as trauma.
Right, right. And I don't think you're wrong for thinking of it that way. And I'd like to think about that more and
Please
see how
do. We'll have another conversation about it. Have you read Pete Walker's book, Complex PTSD from Surviving? Yeah,
yes,
so good.
That's it.
I want to ask you this. What do you think are some unique challenges for adult children of specifically narcissistic parents as opposed to other forms of dysfunction? Like, what do you think are the most common, like, roadblocks perhaps to recovery that subset would encounter?
Well, and I think of one in particular. One jumps out at me, which would be kind of like self-hate. Because if you have a narcissistic parent, they do really annihilate the self and annihilate. In fact, I have a video that is called The Annihilation of Our Awareness. And I've got that. And I'm trying to think where I think we put that one up. But I did that as a workshop or as a standalone kind of thing. No audience. No, I was just teaching that annihilation and how we miss that. And we don't know
somewhere.
Yeah. And that's what you're saying. And that's why it's interesting, because what you're saying is our perception of the world and perception of ourselves is traumatized. And now what kind of perceptions do we have? It's a mess.
Yeah,
right?
It's a fucking shit show.
And we're how we see things, how we see ourselves, it's just all blown up. And that's what I meant by saying the annihilation of the self, because we can't even find a self in there. I mean, we can't, there's not even a self to go find. And I've been working on a book. I've been trying to work on a book to talk about how natural and organic it is to grow up and self-differentiate. And what happens is that gets thwarted. It's a natural process. That's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
But it gets thwarted by all this trauma, all the family issues, all the training and programming and Wi-Fi that we get from the family. We're just swimming in confusion and can't see things as they really are. And well, even like the experience you recently, and I'm certainly not. I mean, I've got my own recent experiences of kind of a relapse situation. Even in your experience, it's like for whatever reason you couldn't see the way it really was.
Yeah, well, part of me could, but a part of me didn't care, right?
But a part of you didn't care. And
it's that fantasy. It's living in that fantasy land. And it's
right.
really, I'm curious about that when you're working with people that are in relationships with people that are narcissists. How do you smash that fantasy that they're holding in their head? How does that happen? Because it's probably a younger self, right, that wants to hold on to that.
Well, certainly. They're trying to reproduce and repeat that cycle, only win at it this time.
Yeah.
Because they lost the last time when they were kids. So now I'm going to win this time, which we don't end up winning. And someone who has kind of in a narcissistic relationship, I think one of the best ways is even to talk about, well, I do loan them my objectivity. And I think that a good therapist or coach will do that. Loan your objectivity to them. And that would be, for example, well, you say he loves you. Let me write down the ways that he does. Can you share with me? I'll write them down. No problem. And then they try to, come up with, well, he took me to dinner last year, well, okay, well, on a daily basis, what does he do to demonstrate that he loves you? And you just keep hitting that lack of reality part and going, but you're not proving to me that he loves you. You're proving to me he's in a relationship with you, but you're not proving to me that he loves you
Mm.
because if you were to look at this list, would that be adequate? If your daughter came to you and said, Mom, here are all the ways my boyfriend loves me, I'm going to marry him, what would you advise she do?
Run for the hills.
Run for the hills. But yet, you're not running.
Well, what about when you're working with people who are in the stage of like they finally can see it now, but
Okay.
they're kind of sitting in that awareness phase before they're able to take some action. Like what are what's that
Okay.
experience like?
And that would be another intervention that could be done, which is, hey, you do see it. Yeah, I do. I know he's not good for me, but all that. And I think I'm just repeating the same old
Yeah, well, they're
thing.
just
And
scared. They're scared to death.
right. And so I would say again, let's say I wave a magic wand, you can now walk away.
Mm,
What would be the downsides?
mhm.
Not the upsides. I know those. You probably know those. The downsides are what we often don't know. What would that,
Mm,
how would that be problematic for you? What would
mhm,
you have said, for example? Would you
mhm.
would
Well,
you
yeah, I
know
mean,
what you
well, the
said?
downside is just it's just all the emotions that you're gonna have to deal with, right? I mean, I think
Gotcha.
that's mostly. I mean, for some people, there's obviously financial stuff that goes on and logistical stuff like that, but I think mostly it's the feelings.
And a feeling would be what? A feeling.
I mean, well,
I'm asking you
there's grieving, there's anxiety. I mean, there's probably fear
well,
of abandonment, all that stuff.
fear of abandonment. That's a
Yeah,
good. That
yeah.
would be a classic. Yeah, I feel I would be abandoned. And of course, they don't really realize that has already come upon them.
Yes, yes.
I
Mhm.
mean, they're already being abandoned.
Mhm.
It's just they're hoping they won't be abandoned while they're being abandoned.
Well, another downside could be they could think, well, I'm just going to be alone for the rest of my life, or
Yeah,
I'll never get
that could
over
be as
this. I
well.
won't survive the
Right.
like there's so many things, right?
And then I would say, so it really this feeling has nothing to do with
With
Bill.
the person. Yeah.
Yeah, it really doesn't have anything to do with Bill.
Yeah.
You've brought them together with Bill, but it really doesn't have anything to do with Bill. So where did you learn that would happen? When did you learn that would happen to you? And where did you learn that? Let's go there, leave Bill out of it. Then you resolve that, then Bill looks different.
Mm-hmm.
You resolve that, and then you go, he's really not the nicest guy in the
Fucking
world.
sucks. Bill sucks.
He, he really does. And why am I staying here? Because you've begun to deal with the inner vows and the internal messages you have that you're always going to be alone. If you don't make people happy or don't do the right things, you're not going to be loved, cared about. You're not going to get all that. You won't deserve that. And so you better straighten up and fly right. And of course, and you better stay with Bill. I mean, that's
You can send them my way. I'll take it. Question for this. Do you feel like it's harder for men to come to grips with their partner, their girlfriend, or their wife being a narcissist? Do you find that's harder for it to sink in with men?
well,
Or are they more rational so they're more easily, I don't
I think men again tend to be a little more avoidant and withdraw, and so they tolerate or cope with a narcissistic wife or partner more that way, and they will just be a non-entity, and then they don't have to choose. Then they want to get into a position where they don't have to choose. And I've seen that with a lot of clients that I've seen whose the mother was a narcissist
Yep.
and the dad wasn't, and heard the stories about what the dad was doing. And the last thing the dad wants to do is have you come to him and him have to choose.
I find this really interesting because I guess I never really thought about this, but like, in my mind, I would kind of view that the narcissist would more so be the avoidant. It's interesting to think of like, because you think of like the narcissist and the codependent, but it's interesting to think of the codependent as being the avoidant one. It's interesting to me. It's hard for me to conceptualize.
Right. And again, when I mean, and that doesn't mean, well, but when you're talking about men here,
Yeah.
we're talking about
Yeah.
men,
Yeah.
and they're not always going to be very deep in terms of dealing with their feelings about this whole thing.
Yeah.
And if their wife or the mom is more technicolor, the narcissist in a technicolor way, she's critical. She could be enraged. She could, give, she's in control. It's all about her. Well, what does a codependent man do with an alcoholic wife? Or what does a codependent wife do with an alcoholic man? I mean, they're going to try to be, if you just get along with your mother, you know how she is, just she loves you when maybe mom has no idea what love is. And she loves you, and we're just going to have to get along with mom. It's like, what? Yeah, I've tried that for 45 years. It hasn't worked yet. And so I've seen a lot of dads and fathers just kind of take the withdrawal and stay out of the crossfire. And in fact, in many ways, for the guy, if the mom is more focused on the kids, that's better for him. That's even better for him. So, because you get the kids out of there, she's going to turn her sights a different way. And so, hey, this works, And then the mom will come to dad and come, what my daughter was doing? You know what the daughter was doing? Blah, 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 all that. Oh, now, honey, and he'll just placate or try to calm her down.
Yeah, that's my
and
dad.
and then just stay out of it. And then just stay out of it. Don't get me too involved.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like my mom's alcoholic, but my dad was more of the narcissist. I mean, he's definitely an alcoholic now too. They truly have like it's the most fucked up dysfunctional thing it's nuts. When there's like money to keep it all together, I mean, it's just their life is crazy. It's crazy.
And then if there's enough resources, nobody wants to change the
Yeah, because
marital.
it's like he doesn't want her to be sick, but he wants to keep the control. So he's kept her sick,
Right. And that's, and in some ways, even keeping someone sick is a withdrawal because I want you out of here. I want you weakened. I want you, I do
exactly
not want to have to deal with it. And so you be the sick one, and we'll all be happy.
Yeah. I mean, my mom said it's very late stage alcoholism, but my dad called me last night. I try to stay out of it as much as I can, and he just goes,
Sure.
he goes, "Have you heard from your mom the past few hours?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Yeah, she called me 3 hours ago and said that somebody backed into her car and now her phone's been off for the past 3 hours." And I go, "Well, she's probably in jail or something." He goes, "No, she said that someone backed into her car." And I go, "You believe her?" Like,
I mean, right.
I'm like,
oh,
"What?"
That's right. We need
You really think that's what happened?
She is a great historian. Yes. And
The
no,
delusion. The delusion.
what happened? She could have drove into somebody else. She could have, she could be, she may not even remember what happened. I don't.
What do you think about these people on Instagram and social media that are like claiming that they're like recovered narcissists?
Well, I always tend to, maybe naively, I don't know, say anything's possible.
Yeah, anything is possible.
But I don't know but it's like when I worked in a psychiatric practice, there was a lot of folks who would come and say, I was bipolar and now I'm not. Okay. But I'm saying, were you bipolar?
Yeah, exactly.
First?
Exactly. Were you an alcoholic? Was it trauma? Yeah.
Right, exactly. But
like everyone's getting diagnosed with bipolar when they go into treatment.
Right. So it's okay. And so I think it's just, I don't know if they have assessed their starting point well. Now again, maybe, and there are narcissists who would have some amenability to therapy. There are some, because I believe counterdependence, it's codependence and counterdependence. And I consider counterdependence psychological narcissist, not personality disorder narcissist.
Like narcissistic tendencies.
Right, right. And they would have traits, and it's over issues that they have had in their life, and they become this counter-dependent person. And they're amenable to therapy, and you can help them. And I think even a narcissist, there might be some who could be helped. Boy, but just when you
have you worked with any? Like, do you know I've talked to who's had a little bit? He said it's very rare, and he said it takes forever and ever. Do you know who Dr. Kirk Honda is? Psychology in Seattle. He's on YouTube. He's great. You need to look him up. He does great stuff. He does a lot of stuff on like reality TV and stuff, but he's also in practice, really knows his shit. But I've talked to him about it. There's been a couple of people that he says that like, and it's just taken years and years and years and years. It's very rare, but he said there's been a couple people that, slowly over time. Have you had any experiences with that?
No. And I've had experiences
You have?
and they have in some ways connected to me in a positive way.
Yeah.
And will hear me.
Yeah.
And they have to, if they can't hear you, then you're just kind of playing a game. But if they will hear you, then now how strongly are they a narcissist if they hear you? But then I go back to, but narcissism is not just a static thing. It's on a continuum.
Yep.
So it's not just, are you NPD or are you not?
Well, yeah, they're kind of saying the whole, I think they're moving towards like all personality disorders kind of being more in a spectrum and not being a diagnosis, right?
Exactly. And if you took an MMPI test, Minnesota multiple.
Yeah, I know how I know about that. Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. That's how I know about that shit.
There you go. And there's like 366 questions, true or false, and you can't fake it, and you will, if you're healthy, you will lie at least 5 times. If you lie 7 times, you're not healthy. If you lie none, then your test is invalid. Because they ask you questions that you have no idea what the purpose of the question is.
Yeah, they're very random.
Have
you done them before? Are you trained to do it?
No, but I had supervision with it. So
are the results standardized?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it really, to do it well, you need to learn it over years. But if you notice, the MMPI personality inventory is multiphasic personality inventory. Everybody's got something.
Yeah.
Everybody's got it, because it's all on a scale. And you may have hypochondriacal. You're always sick. Could be low, could be high, could be middle, could be anything. Narcissist, sociopathic, histrionic, all the
borderline.
different borderline. And so they're checking all of that, and they can be at different levels, for this person. And it's only checking pathology. It's not checking your good sides. There are other California personality tests, looks for strengths and weaknesses. MMPI is just about what problems are you having.
We don't got time for the good shit. Come on.
We didn't have time for all that.
Yeah. So if we're here taking this test, I don't think we're like, I think we need to just be focused on whatever the problem is. Like, why do we need to water this down? There's obviously a problem here.
You would do really well with gardening.
Yeah.
But what?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
funny. What do you think about this? Was very interesting to me. I had on Susan Anderson, who's like the abandonment trauma guru.
Yes.
We were talking about the overuse of the term narcissist. And she used a term that I thought was so interesting. And that was defensive abandonment. I'm not rejected. You're a narcissist. Like, you didn't abandon me. You're a narcissist. Do you have this is your wheelhouse. This is what you're making a ton of video. I know it's so popular. People want the information. Are you ever being like, no, that's not narcissism?
Oh, sure. Sure.
I bet those
And
videos don't do well. I bet you like.
well, and when I talk about narcissism, I am using a more commonly used understanding of narcissism. I
Mhm.
am not trying to diagnose that person in
With the
their life.
personality disorder. Yeah.
Right. We will generally talk about narcissists, whether they are or aren't in this way, or technically if they're, and so I'm okay with that. And people say, well, you're only focusing on narcissism, or
Mm.
you're making everybody a narcissist. Let me tell you, if I could help people see that everybody's a narcissist and they would begin to get help from me and begin to grow and become more self-differentiated,
That'd be okay.
I don't care if they see everybody as a narcissist. I don't care, because I'm trying to take them to a different place.
Yeah, but the problem is when people become too outer focused and too focused on figuring out who's a narcissist and who's not, right?
But they're right. But they're already too outer focused.
Yeah, that's very true.
So I'm going to approach their outer focusedness and bring them into the fold of starting to become inner focused. I'm not trying to get them to become more expert on narcissism.
Yeah.
What good is that going to do you if you become a PhD in narcissism? I mean, okay, well, you're a smart person. That's great. But is it going to help change your life? Is it going to? And so I'll take your outer focus and I'll come and get you and say, yes, you're right. And then I want to help shepherd you towards a greater health and maturity.
I was just looking at like your videos and what's done like very well. And I think this is a topic that a lot of at least my community members could relate to a lot. But you have this one about when narcissistic parents grow older. What were you talking about there?
Oh, yes. That was actually fairly popular.
Yeah, that's what it was. It's hugely popular.
Right. And I think people were wanting to know, okay, I've been able to avoid my parents or parents for so many years. Now I got to deal with them and they are narcissists. Now what do I do? And I think that's what I wanted to address and help people take a look at from a family systems perspective. And is there a way to ethically or morally either help or take care of a parent, or even ethically decide not to take care of a parent?
Okay. What are some things to consider here?
About
this, yeah, that. I mean, I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But is there any like a good nugget from that, or something that you think would be particular poignant for people to know?
Well, first of all, I think it depends on where you are in your recovery.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not very far along, if you're in the middle of your own mess,
yeah,
I'm not sure taking care of your parents is going to be you're going to be a bigger mess.
Yeah.
Second of all, if you have to spend 95% of your energy and time making the relationship work, and the parent spends 4% of their time trying to make it work, we've got a problem. You're going to be exhausted out. Your cortisol level is going to be drained, And so, when we think about some of those things, here are some practical things. If you can be more and learn to be more detached, you might be able to help more from a detached perspective. And in other words, if you're going to help a parent and there have been negative things going on in your life and you have recovered and have some neutrality about that, and you cannot care and you fully realize they're not well, then you might be able to, okay, I'll pay the bills. If I need to take you to the doctor, I can do that.
I'm sure it's impossible to be in a place where it wouldn't get to them at all. I would think that's probably not possible, but like if it's manageable.
Well, and I think it's can be possible even more than manageable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, totally not affected. Okay, that may be
Not realistic.
not realistic. But I just had a client she spent 3 sessions with me. She spent 8 hours with her, 90-year-old mother, who is a mess and treats her badly. She comes back and she said, I can't believe how I did not cry. I did not argue. I felt much more myself. It didn't matter. I think she did get a rise. I think there was a moment where she did get a rise, but I mean, hey, she's just early in the, I'll take it. But to be with her for 8 hours, taking her to Walmart, to the doctor's store, to the doctor's office.
Doctor's store,
That's right, the doctor's store. And she really felt a difference by talking about self-differentiation and being detached, and that, why are you allowing your mom to affect you that much? If you gave up letting her affect you, how would you show up, and what would be the downsides?
Did they ever chill out when they age?
Well, they can age out. I suppose some might age out and they get more
age out of narcissism.
I think
I don't know, maybe
you're a little more the other way, but because then they will use their illnesses and their victimhood, and well, I'm the one that had the heart attack, kind of,
Was your mother was your mom a narcissist? And what was has she passed?
She passed.
And what did you have a relationship with her when she was passing?
Yes.
And what was that experience like for you?
And I was doing a lot of work on myself so that I could decide, what do I want to do with her? Not what's right, what society says, what anybody else feels, I didn't want any of the, what do I want to do with this woman? What will I feel okay about and could accept? And that was a helpful process to work on that. And that also, am I ready to tell mom no? Well, you need to come and visit me more at the nursing home, Jerry. You only come once a week on Sunday. Yes. You know what, Mom? I really do come once a week on Sunday. Isn't that amazing? I don't have to come at all.
Yeah. Do you have siblings?
I do. My brother passed away in the last couple of years. Mom passed away in the last 3 or 4 years.
So, okay. I was going to say, what was the experience like if he was, I was just wondering if you guys had split the responsibilities at all, or was he not present then?
He had health problems and couldn't help. His wife did help, thankfully, my sister-in-law. And then my sister lived out in Arizona, so many states away from me. So that wasn't going to, so it was basically me. And now my sister has moved back here now. And
what's your relationship like with her?
Pretty decent. I mean, we're cool, but we're certainly different in many ways. And I love her, and she is my sister, but would I have chosen her as a good friend? Probably not. Or her me,
Were you close to either of your siblings when you were growing up?
I had a pretty rough relationship. I was the youngest.
Yep.
My brother's in the middle, sister's the oldest. And my brother and I probably fought a lot. There was a lot of, but I think we were acting out family pain.
Yeah.
Is what we were doing, and doing it to each other. And Marcia was 7 years older, so she was kind of 7 years older, so being close with, but she and I went through religious churches and experiences together. So we had that
in common.
Past.
Has she gone on, has she had a healing journey or recovery journey herself?
She's had a religious journey, a spiritual journey. I've took the recovery direction. And so we have a difference in that perspective, that making God happy is more important than recovery.
Yes.
Kind of
Yes. I
notion.
understand.
And it's like, okay, but I don't think I even need to make God happy. If he's God, then why do I have to make him happy?
Yeah, he should be doing pretty good.
He should be able to handle
I don't think that's
that.
how it works. Right?
Right. That's right. Why do I? And I'm making him cry because
Yeah.
wow, God's got a lot of issues.
Yeah. God. Yeah. God, so yeah, he needs self-differentiation, right?
He needs some work on that area.
Yeah.
Oh,
So do you have any trainings coming up, workshops, anything you're excited about, topics? What do you want to push, dude?
sure. Well, first of all, anybody that, and I'm going to send, I think we may have sent you the link or whatever to a free 84-minute training, getting the
On?
stuff where you were never allowed to have.
Mm,
And that's all free. People can just go there, get 84 minutes and
wonderful.
hear talk. And then then I have the online program,
Mhm.
Road to Self, which is 45 years of my work in this program. And we are now working on, and in fact, we were just talking about today, we want to do a video on what do you do when you're going through a program like this or going through any program and you become triggered. How do you benefit from the program and what do you do if you experience that?
So that's so interesting. So are you saying getting triggered by the material or triggered by other people that are participating in the course?
Well, it could be both.
Either.
Because I've also had group calls. We have once a month group call, and I try to help them integrate the program with their problems on those group calls.
Well, thanks, Jerry. This is great. We'll talk to you next time. We'll have to have a follow-up on our chat about trauma.
Trauma, absolutely. Well, I'm trying to integrate
I
trauma
love that.